Welcome to Obstacle Running Adventures.
Over the last 7 years, we have consistently released weekly episodes focusing on
obstacle course racing, running, and other adventures.
You'll hear interviews, event recaps, conversations about our sport,
quick news updates about happenings in our community.
And now, here are your hosts,
Standing on the corner,
Michael Stefano and Caitlin Ritter.
Hey guys, it's Michael Stefano.
And Caitlin Ritter. And Michael, how was your weekend?
Pretty good. I got to see Electric Callboy, which is a band that I've been very big into for the past, a few months. More than a few months. 6 months? And they were fantastic. And so I'm a little exhausted today because last night was a super late night. But it was a good time. Caitlin, give a shout out to our sponsors.
Shout out Mudgear. Use code ADVENTURE for 15% off your next Mudgear purchase. And Caterpie, use code OCR Report 20 for 20% off your next Caterpie purchase.
Perfect. We're going to shout out the $5+ Patreon supporters.
Jason Dupree, Samantha Thompson, Bradley Keel, Charlotte Engelman, Aaron Grindstaff, Laura and Stephen Ritter, Hank and Arlene Stefano, Kenny West, Cheryl Miller, Jessica Johnson, Nick Riker, Christopher Hoover, Kevin Gregory Jr., Evan Irick, Brent George, Logan Nagel, Asa Kyneton, and Seth Runderknech.
Yeah, and shout out to the OCR Report for being a great home for us on the internets.
And to Will Hicks.
The Podfather.
Check it out at theocrreport.com.
Yeah, they just did a live stream of Big Bear. I haven't watched it yet, but I plan to check it out. We'll see. And a shout out to our sponsored athletes.
Javier Escobar, Kelly Sullivan, Ryan Brizzalara, and Joshua Reed.
Perfect. We're going to get to some poll results. So Caitlin asked, do you sweat while rock climbing? Caitlin, do you want to give the background of this?
I was sweaty, and Mike said, "Oh, what are you, sweating during rock climbing?" Yes, Michael, I was.
It was more so that, we were doing kind of round robin and there were 3 of us. So I had a long time to cool down, so I never really ended up sweating. But 91% of people said yes, they do sweat, which is fair. Most people are probably just going hard. When
I was rock climbing, I was going hard, and I was also in long pants and long sleeves.
Yeah, that was kind of tough. I wore sweatpants, but I didn't end up sweating. My feet sweat. But
the shoes are also nasty.
The shoes are real gross. I don't like rock climbing shoes. Don't like them at all. We're going to skip meme of the week, but we're going to get to some quick news, starting with the teddy bear crawl at the Boston Spartan Race.
Yes, so the teddy bear crawl will be happening at the Bari Spartan Race at 7 a.m. on the Sunday of the Spartan Race. Participants get to bear crawl through the kids course, and you get to win or receive that orange medal once you...
Which I've always wanted.
Yes.
Since City Field had the orange medal, which they don't do that anymore because they're no fun.
So once you complete your bear crawl, you get the orange medal, and it is to raise money to purchase teddy bears for children in kids' hospitals.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to be doing them all over, but we only know about the Boston one.
8 cities.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So I'm definitely looking to take part of that. I've always wanted to earn a kids medal, and bear crawling the course seems like a great way to go about doing that. Next up, we have a shout out for Matthew Carroll.
I saw this.
Yeah. Cassandra Carroll, or formerly known as Cassandra Oman, posted 6 months of early mornings, sleepless nights, and countless hours spent writing papers and studying has paid off, and all while being the best daddy and role model for a baby boy. Matthew, I can't begin to describe how proud of you I am. It was inspiring to see firsthand the hard work and dedication you put into the academy, and still being present for Benji and me. Goes on for a little bit longer, but it says, cheers to you, Officer Carroll. Plymouth is lucky to have you. So congratulations to him for passing his test and whatever else he had to do to get that job.
I like that the baby's name is Benjamin, but they call him Benji. That's cute.
Next up, we have a mom bragging on her son. This comes to us from Natalie Miano, and she posted, big news. Nico was awarded a scholarship to attend space camp in the United States Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, awesome. Alabama. He'll be in the company of other scholarship winners from around the world. This session is special for kids with visual impairment, and he will, for the first time, meet and team up with other kids with albinism. My heart is exploding. Thank you, Northrop Grumman, for his incredible opportunity for my special boy. He is ready and more excited than he's been for anything yet in his life. So proud of you, Nico. So congratulations to Nico.
I love that.
Next up, Caitlin, you found this new story about City Challenge Race, Hartford being canceled.
Yes, I did. Somebody posted a screenshot of an email that said, "Dear City Challenge Racers, I hope this email finds you well and ready for another thrilling adventure with City Challenge Race. I'm writing to let you know today with an important announcement regarding the upcoming Hartford City Challenge Race scheduled for June 1st. We regret to inform you that we will not be able to proceed with the Hartford City Challenge Race on the originally planned date." Then it goes on to tell you that they're going to provide you with alternatives that maintain the excitement and spirit of City Challenge, and that you can transfer to another City Challenge race if you'd like.
Next up, we have a quick post from Rachel Waters saying April 23rd, 2024, the best day of my life. So apparently she got married. Congratulations to Rachel Waters.
Would you say that our wedding day was the best day of your life?
Maybe. It's up there. It was a good one. This is an exciting one, and I highly recommend you watch the video because it's Leon and Anita being awesome people. But they posted, exciting news. We are thrilled to announce the upcoming launch of our 8-week OCR training program. Designed by world champions Ida Matilde and Leon Kofed, this program offers structured, adjustable workouts focused on running, strength, and grip training. It's a one-time payment for a comprehensive guide to transforming your OCR skills. Learn more on our blog, link in bio. So best of luck with them with that. Should be releasing somewhat soon, but not yet. And then one of my college friends, Cody Jackson, posted, "Hello friends and family out there, looking for something meaningful to donate to? Excited to announce my friend Jenna and I are holding a fundraising campaign in support of Big City Mountaineers, a nonprofit based in the Front Range of Colorado. It's actively trying to provide transformative experiences in nature for youth who may not otherwise have an opportunity to spend immersive time outdoors. For every $125 my campaign raises, costs for one young person's day hike are covered. For every $875, cost for one young person's week-long expedition in the backcountry is covered." And he goes on to say, "This summer, Jenner and I will be through hiking the Colorado Trail. We'll be traveling on foot approximately 500 miles with around 90,000 feet of elevation gain between Denver and Durango over the course of a month between mid-August and mid-September. It is our hope to have a meaningful and impact adventure. Through Big City Mountaineers Adventure for Someone program, we will raise funds to help others who are less fortunate gain access to the positively transformational power of quality time spent in nature." All right, next up we have a whole bunch of podiums.
I'm ready when you are.
We're going to start with the Spartan UK Championship Series race. This was the London West Beast Podiums.
For men, in third place, Jason Bronach. In second place, Leon Kofed. And in first place, Roman Toth. And for the women, in third place, Jay Skillen. In second place, Frederica Di Caria. And in first place, Andrea Berquez.
Nice. Next up, we have the Spartan Raymond James Stadium, because I refuse to say stadion.
And that's in Tampa, Florida? Is that where the Rays play?
No idea. I'm not a sports person.
For the men, in third place, Kevin Donahue. In second place, Yacelio Veloso.
Yes, Yellow Veloso.
And in first place, Alvaro Vasquez. And for the women, in third place, Emily Wheeler. In second place, Kason Gobakina. And in first place, Bridget Brown.
Next up, the Spartan Big Bear Beast Podiums.
For the men, in third place, Omar Padilla. In second place, Orlando Lopez. And in first place, Juan Rocha. And for the women, in third place, Anais. Is that how you would say that?
Yeah.
Adad. Second place, Rachel Munoz. And in first place, Chloe Milliken.
You struggle so badly with her. We need to have her on the show so I can learn how to say it. But I'd say it's Milliken. They did talk about it on Race Brain, so maybe I should have taken notes there. Next up, the Spartan Southern Championship Series Bled Beast Podiums.
In Slovenia. So, how do you say it?
Slovenia, right?
Oh, sure. Not second place. In third place, Peter Kanija. In second place, Jeremy Gochet. And first place, Andrea Riva. And in third place for the women, Jolinia Janazuk. In second place, Karen McQuarrie. And in first place, Amanda Schneider.
And we are just going in the order that the OCR report posts them because it makes it easier for us to read them. Next up, we have OCR X Trail X Light Podiums.
In Malvino, Italy.
Italia.
What?
Italia?
What is that?
Italy?
No, it says Malvino.
Yeah, it's like Spain saying España.
Oh.
Yeah.
In third place, for men, Lucas Colbel. In second place, Thomas Bragania. And in first place, David Blankenberg. And for the women, in third place, Francesca Skipapility. In second place, Katrina Holo. And in first place, Denise Sotovia.
All right, keeping with the foreign races, we have Spartan Czech National Series Super in Brno.
For the men, in third place, Jacob Haverick. In second place, Jacob Kohler. And in first place, Pavel Herdina.
Oh, yeah, he's a big deal.
And then for the women, in third place, Adilia Mesakova. In second place, Zuzana Go ahead.
Kokomova?
Yes. And then in first place, oh no. Esther Horto
Bagiova.
I'm
pretty sure. Pretty close. Pretty good. We've had a lot of opportunities to practice that one. And now we have the Spartan U.S. National Series Big Bear Super Podiums.
For the women, in third place, Casey Monroe. In second place, Rose Wetzel. And in first place, Annie Doobie. And for the men, in third place, Baleen Bean. In second place, Manuel Defoe. And in first place, Hawk Call.
Nice. I usually like to do like a top 5 for those, but like there's a lot of National Series events here, so I don't want to short anyone. And then the last one is the Spartan Austin Super Podiums.
For the men, in third place, Esteban Laraganiga. I bet you it's that double R.
Oh, yeah, I can't.
In second place, Dustin Rudder. And in first place, Van Tran. And for the women, in third place, Sarah Tucker. In second place, Nicole Miller. And in first place, Charity Bourne.
Let me give it another try. Laranaga. Esteban Laranaga. That's fun to say if that's it.
I can't do that thing.
And if it's wrong, it's fun to say wrong. Secret links, there's 5 of them down below, so go and check those out if you would like to. But let's get to what this episode is all about. So Evan Perperis achieved his 100th OCR podium this weekend at Toughest Mudder at Philadelphia. He was very pretty vocal about this. And I thought it would be a really cool time to have him on the show. So we talk about how that event went in particular, his feelings on the achievement, other podiums that stick out to him the most. We discuss what's next for him, both in sport and in life. And let's get to that interview. So I'll start off with your name and where you're from.
Evan Preparis, originally from Long Island, New York. I live in Kansas, in the middle of Kansas right now.
Perfect. So last time we had you on the show, it was World's Toughest Mudder in November. So what have you been up to since?
Since World's Toughest Mudder, I've been working mostly, doing a lot of martial arts stuff, and then just kind of pecking away at some goals, which is kind of why I'm on the podcast. We've just been working towards getting a couple more podiums to hit like a lifetime goal I've been after, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then also you've been adding team members to the Mud Gear Hannibal Race Pro team too. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we always have kind of a changeover in personnel as people come and leave the sport. The goal is to have a group of athletes who represent the brands we represent really well and are high performers. So we're always kind of on the lookout to not necessarily replace people, but as people step back from the sport, we look for new people to come in and represent the brands. And we've added a ton of really great people this year. I mean, our roster this year might be our best roster ever. Kevin Thompson, Sarah Grippy Snyder, Noel Medina.
Josh Fiore.
You can put me on the spot. Yeah, Joshua Fiore, Northeast guy. Let's see who else. Jamie Horianopoulos, right? The all-time Savage great.
Crushing it, yeah.
Yeah, Vivian Tran. And she's been doing a lot of really good stuff on our social media. If you're not following Mud Gear Hannibal Race Pro Team on Facebook or Instagram, check them out. Anything that looks fancy, that's her.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, we had Sarah Grippy Snyder on not too long ago, and it was cool having her on talk about her mental performance coaching. Last episode we had Noel Medina on the show talking about him going to train with Kunkel. What are your feelings on him going to Durango and training with Kunkel? I know you spent a lot of time with him in Alula.
Uncle's he's a strange guy.
Yeah,
I think after I had him on my podcast, I said I've never met someone who's so different than me, and at the same time has so many like intersecting points. It's so weird. Like we feel a lot of the same ways, but how we get there is almost complete opposites.
yeah.
I find him really fascinating as a human being. And I seem to get I didn't think I'd get along with him, but after hanging out with him in Alula, which another thing I've been up to, I was in Saudi Arabia for the Infinity Race.
Yeah.
I got along with him pretty well, and I think I don't agree with everything, all of his methods and stuff like that. I think it's interesting, and I'm glad he's open to dialogue.
Yeah, more than anything, I appreciate the fact that he seems willing to learn. Like it sounds like he went out of his way to really learn more about the culture, more so than many other people, athletes that came out for that event too. And I respect that too.
Yeah, he was. I mean, we were walking down the streets, and he was like pointing out letters and numbers and stuff like that, and I was talking but I know a little bit of Arabic. I was kind of trying to help him out, and yeah, it was cool experience.
Cool. We definitely have to dive in that a little bit too. For some reason, I didn't even think about that as a topic. But how was your experience for Tough Mudder Alula?
It was amazing. I mean, if you want to hear like the full rundown, you can head over to Strength and Speed podcast. I did like a longer run, but essentially, I mean, I flew in and it felt like it was a private event for the best of OCR ever. So because like my flight from Dubai into Al Ula was all OCR people and not like random. It was like literally the best of the best OCR people on one flight. If that plane would have went down, our sport would be in trouble because there goes all the top athletes. And then they did a really good job of like once you got to the airport. I mean, there was people there to meet you. Matt Davis was there to kind of greet people along with the Tough Mudder staff, and they took us on a bus back to the base camp there. And then at the base camp, they kind of took care of everything for you. You know, the tents we stayed in, they had food on site. They offered essentially tourist trips into town, and then the race was right there, right? So like you walked out of your tent, you walked 100 feet, and you were at the start line. And that was really cool because a lot of times when we do a race, we fly someplace, you do your race, and then you go back to your hotel room and you're like segregated from everyone.
Yeah.
And it was cool to be like immersed there. So that like post race high you got, kind of like when you go to a World's Toughest Mudder brunch, it was like kind of like that. So the race ended, and then it was just continuation of kind of like the celebration and people enjoying their time in Saudi Arabia.
That's awesome. I heard a lot of good things. One of the few critiques that I was hearing a lot was the difficulty of obstacles. So I heard differing stories about like they tried to put some obstacles out there, they couldn't get it to work. What did you think about the obstacle difficulty?
I mean, for elites, it was very easy.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Even for, I'd say, the average OCR fan, I'll say, right? So someone who listens to this podcast, you would have gone out there and been like, these obstacles are easy. This is not a problem.
Right.
But you also have to remember it's probably Saudi Arabia's like 8th OCR ever.
Yeah.
So if you put the obstacles that are at OCR World Championships or Conquer the Gauntlet or Savage Race out there, I mean, people just get obliterated.
Fair.
You know, so they did do an open wave, essentially an open wave first, like a normal Tough Mudder event for Saudi Arabia. It was pretty small. And then they let the course clear, and then they sent out all the elite athletes for the 8-hour Infinity. So I guess they could have amped up the obstacle difficulty if they really wanted to after the regular open waivers went through. But there was also people traveling in from other parts of the Middle East and from Europe. The Europeans would have been fine. Again, the Middle Easterners they haven't seen that many obstacles unless they travel a lot. So I think it was appropriate for that region. And the reason everyone went on the trip was level of competition, prize money, and experience.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going just for the obstacles, I would have recommended not going. But you know, that's not why people went. And that's not what people were talking about after the race. They were talking about the experience.
Yeah. One additional thing that I was hearing a lot of too was the communication. So I know that the start time had to be pushed back. There was all sorts of like wonkiness with that. What was your experience with dealing with the communication from Tough Mudder and everything?
I thought it was about appropriate. As someone who worked in the Middle East, usually their communication is not always the best. It's a lot of inshallah, which means essentially God willing.
Okay.
Which means they kind of let God decide how things play out. And it didn't bother me. I kind of expected it. They did do some good stuff as far as like I said, since we were on site, when they pushed back the start time, they had someone walk around to every tent and tell people.
That's good.
Right. So they were trying. They didn't have like a giant group text or anything. So, and if they put it over the loudspeaker, which I think they did, but not everyone would have heard it. Right. So they did send someone around to talk about it. It rained in Saudi Arabia that night and that morning, right? Like they did not design the obstacle. They did not design things to handle rain. Right. So I thought they did the best they could. I didn't think it was a big deal. We ended up getting the full length of race and things played out. And this is OCR. I think people are used to changes and unknowns. I just think it's part of the sport.
Yeah, I only bring up those two things because those were the two like biggest complaints. Other than that, I heard it was like a really cool experience. And while it would have been a big financial burden to make it out there in time and everything with the time zones, it sounded like it was a really, really good time and worth people's while to go out there.
Yeah, the ones that had the best time, in my opinion, were people who took an extra like week before or after. Yeah. And a lot of people hit up Dubai on the way in. I got to do Dubai very briefly. I didn't leave the airport on the way in, and I did Qatar. We left the airport for about 8 hours on the way out with a bunch of Chris Rogolowski and some other OCR usuals, Christian Brown Johnson. Yeah, so it was cool. I'd lived in Dubai. I'd lived in Qatar for work for the military, so I knew the area decently well.
Right. And that was something that I appreciated a lot too when you talk about doing races. Like a means race, handball race, and talking that like, yeah, there are some things that are true that you hear out there, but it's a lot of like misinformation and different areas, even though they're near each other, can be completely different too. And it was really good. I think you had an episode with Rachel Waters where you talked about that too. Like as a woman, what should I expect? And it was really good as someone that's been there for a long time could really like relay that information. I thought that was really valuable.
Yeah.
So speaking of Tough Mudder, this weekend you achieved your 100th OCR podium. How do you feel?
Feel good. It feels like most of the pressure is from myself to myself. Like no one's tracking things very well, right? So, it's just a goal I had set probably about 5 years ago, and I've just been chipping away at it. So it kind of feels good to have that like burden lifted off my shoulder. Yeah. At the same time, it like most times when you hit like a really big goal, sometimes you feel like lost. You're like, and now what do I do? Right. Just because I've been like so singularly focused on this goal for so long. So part relief, part self, satisfaction on accomplishment, part like feeling slightly lost. But good. It was a good event to hit 100 at. I was trying to do Mythic Race in Missouri, and I ended up having to work that weekend due to the military. So that ended up not panning out. But Will Shell from Mythic Race got me something in a sealed cardboard box I have not opened. I'm going to go home and open. I'm really excited. I do know it's from Mark Ballas, or he ordered it through Mark Ballas, who's doing some like custom woodwork stuff. So I think it's something like that, but I'm going to go check that out as soon as I get home and do a live stream.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that later, but do you have any idea when that live stream is going to be for the unboxing of that?
Probably Wednesday. It's basically once I get home. I don't know when we're releasing this, but
yeah, might be probably tonight. Okay. We're probably releasing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And, I was kind of expecting that kind of answer too, of the excitement and the accomplishment, but also like what's next, because it makes me think of all of the Ultra OCR challenges, the fundraising challenges that you put on for yourself, which I think is extremely admirable. It's one thing to do an event that someone else sets up, but to set up your own event and do all the marketing and do all of the things, like it's a lot there. And to have that internal motivation, I think is really, really admirable.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I know how difficult that summit is. You were behind the scenes for probably the most complicated one, it took the most time and the most effort, and I had the shortest time to execution from planning. So it's so much work. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
So I want to hear more about this event in particular, since we didn't make the trip out, and I love the overnight races and everything. So talk to me about how your event went. Like you went in as a team. Tell me all about it.
Yeah. So I with it being 100, I wanted to guarantee a podium essentially. And I knew if I brought a strong team, because I brought teams of varying quality in the past, and we've usually managed to squeak onto the podium anywhere between first and third. So I was like, well, if I bring a strong team, like I can almost guarantee a first place. Yeah. So I reached out to a couple of guys who are typically right above or right below me in placement. and I got Christian Brown Johnson, 2 times 100-miler finisher. He's got 6 toughest team wins, top 10 or top 5 at World's Toughest, I think twice. Just phenomenal athlete, great guy. He was also on the Infinity team in Alula. I got added to their team. I was the last minute addition for that one. I got Ryan Artigo. He's a strength and speed guy. Usually finishes right behind me. He's been on toughest podium before. I think he's 90 plus miles guy at World's Toughest, top 10 guy. And good. Then Chris Miko Juelski. Can't pronounce his last name. But he was on my team last time we won toughest. And another, top 10 World's Toughest guy, top 5 toughest guy, 90 plus, World's Toughest mileage guys, right? So they were like almost, I feel like they were carbon copies of me and often slightly better versions of me.
Chris actually asks, what was your favorite part of having him on your team?
Chris is energetic and extroverted, and always keeps me entertained. So the last time we did it, it was 2 people at a time. You had to run with a buddy. And this time they changed the rules. So we signed up, the first and last lap had to be together just like always, but the middle laps were all 1 man on course, or you only had to put 1 man on course.
Forgot about that.
So it was kind of weird. Like you'd run and then you'd be like, now I wait 2 hours. Yeah. And that's with a fast team. Right. If you have a slow team, you might run a lap, wait 5 hours, run 1 more, wait 5 hours, and then run your last, like, you might only run 2 laps if you have a slow team, which is crazy. We had a fast team. I ran 4 laps total, counting the first and last one. Chris was the only one who got to do a 5th lap. Just the way things kind of played out. So Tough Mudder was asking, the staff asked us what we thought about the new rule change. And I'm kind of like up in the air. I don't really have like a strong opinion yet. Mm-hmm. I don't like it I feel like you lose a lot of the teamwork when I'm running by myself the whole time.
Yes.
The downtimes were really long, so I don't like that. The one thing I did like is I got to run so hard, it was absurd, right? Like when I did my I had a 2-hour break basically between laps. So it felt like, if you ever done a Ragnar relay, it felt like that where, I was running at my lactic threshold pace, like I was running a single 5-mile OCR, and I would pass people and they would audibly gasp. They'd be like, oh my goodness. And like, I'm taking turns where like you have to take them wide because of the speed you're moving. And the way the course was set up, the first half was like really or first mile and a half was like real runnable. Then you hit a couple of like swampy areas. And then there was another runnable section, another swampy area. So anyone who's been to Toughest Philly, it wasn't the normal route. Okay. We kind of ran it in reverse from kind of the normal route. Not exactly, but it was basically in reverse. And we went through a couple of the muddy areas we went through in the previous years. But so that in that respects, it was a lot of fun because I just got to, I got to hammer. I've never run a Toughest at that speed. So mixed feelings. We'll see. I think for anyone who's listening and likes the change, my recommendation would be to sign up for the relay. So you send that to Mag and say, because what they're doing is they're looking at how many signups they get. Right. And if their signups are dropping in the team relay, they will probably change it back. If the signups are increasing, they will probably keep it.
It bothers me thinking about, and I don't really know how the financials work. Is it the same price as a typical team race because you're getting less for your money? That's something.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
And just the whole team aspect of it. Like Tough Mudder is all about teamwork and camaraderie, and like having a team event where you don't, other than like the first and last lap, you don't really run with your team. It's weird. I like the relay. It is weird, format, but it's. I don't know. I don't know how.
I was never a big fan of the relay format in the first place. I understand why they did it. Most of the decisions they're financial, but they're also they want to get more people involved. Right. So I understand why they do it. We've experienced, and you've been around a long time too, so we've experienced so much change in OCR. I don't even get emotional anymore. Right. When brands change things, I'm like, cool. What's the change? Okay. Yeah. I guess that's what we're doing now. It doesn't.
Yeah, and to that point, that the barrier of entry, because that is a good point of like we're obviously thinking of the elite side because that's just what we're on here to discuss right now. But in terms of like the open waivers, like the barrier to entry, like you get to enjoy an overnight race, you get to enjoy the pit, which is like a really good time, and then you only have to do a few laps. So that might make it more appealing to some people and less appealing to others. I will be interested to see how the numbers shake out on that change.
Yeah, and you could argue I mean, you could argue with a timed race, it doesn't really even matter because you could do as much or as little as you want.
Hmm.
You could also argue that with this rule, you could do multiple people on course if you want,
Sure.
right? So you can. So there's nothing stopping you from running all the laps as a 4-man team, staying on course the whole time. Of course, if you want to win, it logically does not make sense to put more than one person on the course.
Right. How is the course for this race? Like, what kind of obstacles did they have out there? Anything new?
Pretty standard stuff. The two big ones that were different were Ladder to Hell, which is the Giant's Ladder, was actually it had wood covering one side and a rope hanging down. So it was a vertical wall. And the rope was actually really slippery. Like I had trouble like getting a good grasp on it. I had to like hook a leg. So
Was it almost like balls to the wall back then, or
balls to the wall. Isn't that the one isn't it slanted? Balls to the wall slanted?
I'm trying to remember. What I remember, I'm thinking it was balls to the wall, but I thought it was like a really tall kind of ladder wall with like the rope.
Yeah,
Like,
so
yeah.
there was no ladder portion. The ladder was on the backside. It was
Okay.
just a flat wall with a rope hanging down. That's all it was. And the rope was wet and slippery. So
Yeah.
I actually think there was like the David Didier, cancer killer, was at Mudderhorn. I actually think he probably would have been better off at the Ladder to Hell.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I think he would have been more useful there. And then Francis Lackner, one of the Everest Angels, was up at Everest. They had a rope hanging down. Francis was basically by himself all night. Deanna Braz ended up joining him at some point and helping out. But a lot of people were pulling themselves up with the rope, and there was very little Everest Angels.
I've been hearing that more and more. Do you see like an overall trend of there being less of them, or do you think that just because this was the toughest event and not world's toughest, it just naturally took a dip?
I think there's less people in general. The start line looked smaller previously. The pit looked smaller. Based off of people who actually showed up and crossed the start line, there was 250 people at the event.
Wow.
That's what like live tracking was showing.
Yeah.
How many registered and didn't show up? I don't know. But based off live registrants at the event, there's 250, which is low. Which also is I do find slightly concerning, right? Because I don't know I don't know the financials. At what point does the cost of putting on a overnight event, how many people do you need to break even, right? And then how many people are like, either they won entries from a previous year or it's part of their season pass or something else where like they're technically not really making any money.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but the problem is if you get rid of toughest, maybe a bunch of those people who bought season passes are now no longer buying season passes,
Right.
or maybe they're not buying the Holy Grail pass. So the financials get really murky when you start like trying to figure out second, third order effects of like the financials of getting rid of it. So I don't know.
I'm thinking back to when I interviewed Chris Maltby last year, and I kind of called out the fact like, it seems like you're prioritizing Tough Mudder Infinity over like toughest mudders. And he's like, no, that's not the case whatsoever. But if you think about it, Infinity is getting to happen while like regular Tough Mudder is happening, and it's in the daytime. And I'm not an expert on insurance, but I imagine insurance fees go up when it's like in the nighttime and you're doing all this crazy shit.
Yeah.
So I get why, even though they say they're not like, focusing on that anymore. But there's also like there's only like there's less toughest mudders this year too, right?
There's 2, which has kind of been the standard for the last couple of years.
Okay.
At one point we had 4
Right.
very early on, and then it's been 3 I think since like 2019. I think
Right.
2017, 2018 we had 4 when it was on 2017 when it was on NBC. 2018 it was not on NBC, but we still had 4, and then 2019 I think it was 3, and then it's been 3 since then, and then we dropped to 2. Now we're at 2.
Yeah.
Did I just contradict myself? I might have contradicted myself.
Yeah, I was thinking because I thought last year that there was like west, east, and then more of like a central. But I
Yeah.
trying to remember back, but
I think we've been at 2 for a while.
okay.
Yeah. The other, before we get too off topic, the other obstacle that people took note of was Arctic Enema, which as someone, this is my 59th Tough Mudder. That was the hardest Arctic Enema I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah. So it was, it had a board just like normal where like you kind of jump in, you have to submerge, you have to go into the board. And then they had a second board, maybe about 6 feet away, except in between the 2 boards was essentially like cage crawl.
Oh.
It was a low fence. And if you just brought your head straight up, your nose, I think, would be out of the water, but your mouth would be in the water to give you an idea of how close the fence was.
Okay.
So most people came up and went sideways to breathe. Or they panicked and they shot their head up and they hit their head on the fence or they hit their head on the board. And then the second pit, the part you exited, like after you went on the second board, they put so much ice in. I mean, it was probably like 6 inches. It may be more, but it was several inches worth of ice. So when you came out, you were like breaking through ice. The 2 fast laps I did by myself, I remember thinking like, oh, that was cold and uncomfortable. But when I went through on the last lap and we were going slow and I had less adrenaline, I wasn't as hot. I like came out and I had an ice headache. I was like, all right, this is pretty bad. It's one of the few times I've seen when people get scared of something, they just kind of like stand in front of the obstacle and just stare at it. Mm-hmm. And every time I came through, there was a couple people just staring at it. Like, it's not going to get any easier. You're probably making it worse by your body's cooling down, staring at the ice. But those are the 2 big notable ones. And then everything else was pretty standard. Funky Monkey, Hanging Tough was there, their version of the rig.
Yep.
Just the tip was there. Instead of the metal holds in the middle, they had rock climbing holds.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And then they had the usual sandbag carry, low crawls, Crybaby, the tear gas one, Mud Mile, electroshock therapy, usual stuff. Nothing. Those are the only 2 big changes.
Yeah. Going back to Arctic Enema real quick, I'm thinking back to, it was either last World's Toughest Mudder or like the one before that too. But I remember when didn't they make it go backwards and a lot of people were getting stuck? I thought like that was the hardest one for a long time.
Oh, good point. They did do that. So that one is probably, that one might be the worst one.
Okay.
It's probably close. It probably depends on the person and depends on your strengths.
Right.
I'll say that. So like if you had a weaker upper body, going backwards definitely would have been worse. But if you were more claustrophobic, if you don't like cage crawl, then this one is definitely worse.
Yeah. At least you got to like burn bright after and like really get your body moving, since you were only doing like 1 lap at a time, whereas everyone else, like, I can only imagine how cold that must have gone. Were a lot of people wearing wetsuits? What was the temperature like?
Temperature was I think it was mid 50s into low 50s. I did not see a lot of wetsuits. I did see a lot of people quitting.
Okay. Yeah.
Toughest, a lot of people are kind of like newer, so they're not quite mentally, they're not ready for the cold, and perhaps they did not bring the appropriate gear. Versus I feel like who come to World's Toughest are both mentally prepared for the cold and physically bring the gear to be prepared for the cold.
Except for that one guy who didn't realize it was 24 hours last year. Nuts.
So there was, and I was also in the pit longer this time, so I got to see what goes on in the pit, which is funny because this is my 10th 12-hour toughest.
Yeah.
And I was like, we have a hospitality tent? This is amazing. I got like ramen in the middle of the night. People are hanging out by the fire. I was like, is this what goes on during a toughest event? I was like, this isn't so bad. Which normally I'm either running for the full 12 hours or I'm running, changing, getting ready to run again.
Right.
So yeah.
Love that. Yeah, we'll get to future, ultra OCR World's Toughest Mudder experiences in a bit. But going back to, Podium 100, obviously we can't talk about each individual one, but which ones stick out the most to you?
The parts that stick out the most are ones, I'd say the ones where my expectations was not, I didn't think I was going to podium coming in. When my results exceed my expectations, those are the ones I feel like I was most excited about. So we finished second at Pro Co-Ed at North American OCR Championships. Me, Amy Pagic, and Matt Willis. We didn't think we were going to podium, and it rained and people couldn't get across obstacles, and we did. So that was super. That was the one I was like awkwardly touching Ryan Atkins on the.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the only time I've been with it, I can touch him on the podium. So
I think Studio was watching you. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, it's a great picture. It's such a good. And Amy Pagic is fucking dying next to me. So that's another good one. Yeah. Anyone where last minute change, right? So Battle of the Lions, I was right near. I moved into first with like 50. I mean, not first. I moved into third with like 50 feet left. Essentially, one of my teammates was on the low rig, had a cramp, fell off, and I made it across. And that's another one. I'm coming across the line screaming, and my daughter is in the background of the picture also screaming, like in the same pose. It's a great picture. And Jacob Stone, another one of our OCR America 2 guys, was at the finish line, and I like hugged him. My first win at Conquer the Gauntlet, where I actually got a gauntlet. That's another one. Again, ran across the line, like hugged David Main Prize, like screaming. Those are some of the big ones. Obviously, like anytime I put him at toughest or worlds when I did the team, those are big ones because the amount of effort you expend over 12 and 24 hours is just huge.
Yeah.
So those are really special. And then the last kind of one I'll categorize is anytime I was on a team and I helped someone else get their first podium. Those were really cool. Because at some point over 100, it just becomes like, this is just what I do. So you lose some of the excitement.
Yep.
And when I help other people get their first podium, it like brings it back, and you just get like you feed off their energy. So we did a race called Hammer Race where you carry 10-pound sledgehammers.
Yes.
And you like through the whole race and you hit things. And when we won, I think there was 2 or 3 guys on that team that helped I got their first podium. One of them was Jacob Stone again. Mm-hmm. And when we won these like Thor hammers. Ooh. And I got this picture of all of us holding up the Thor hammers, like calling down lightning at the finish line. It's so good.
Oh, that's so good.
So that one holds a special place. And we, our friend Brian, I think he was 50 at the time, we pushed him so hard because they only gave the hammers to first place. And it was like, Brian, we're going to turn it up. And he's like dying. And I'm like, now we're turning it up. And he's like, what? In his mind, he's like, I thought we turned it up already. So, yeah, those are some special ones that kind of stick out.
Yeah. I love the thought of, not expecting the podium. I think of actually going back to Amy Pagic. There was a Savage race. I can't remember which one, but Lindsay Webster was doing phenomenal. But it was raining. She was off for game. She hadn't been training as much, whatever the excuse was. And Amy got to pass her and take first, and she beat Lindsay Webster. Like that, those kind of moments are what make OCR so special, is that there are so many variables that like anything can really happen. Like who is trained for the most, anything that could happen. And that's what makes the sport so special.
I completely agree. I love the variability and the number of options and different obstacles and layout. I think that, 100% agree. I got a couple of articles coming out for the OCR report that talk a little bit about some of the stuff we're kind of touching on here.
Yeah. And it's exponentially so for ultra races too.
Yeah, definitely.
And then for finishing this one, I saw you got some big ass balloons for 100.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad brought some balloons, so we brought them out, and they were surprisingly unwieldy. Like I was like, they'll just generally float in the correct order, and they did not. So it took a long time to get the picture where like they're all like actually properly laid out, and it took 4 people to hold it. I tried doing it by myself, and I don't want to tell you what it looked like, but 2 circles and one thing, you can figure out what it looked like. I was like, what? It's like, how does this even happen? So,
and I know how like ridiculously hard it can be to manage those two, because I think when we like celebrated our first like 100 episodes, like we did the same thing with balloons, and yeah, it was embarrassing the amount of time it took to get like a picture that we liked for that.
Yeah.
So Caitlin asks, how do you balance family time, training, work? Like how do you balance all of this?
It's a good question. The best answer is having a very understanding wife. My wife's she does stay at home mom. So she handles a lot of like the nuances and the decisions of the kids. I squeeze in training where I can. I typically try to run in the mornings, and then I go to work, and then typically at work I'll do some sort of strength training, or where I'm working right now is actually at a combatives gym. So essentially it's military martial arts, for lack of a better term. So I'll work out again there, and then I usually go again work out another martial arts thing again in the evening. And typically while my daughter goes to dance. So our family's super busy. We're like always on the move, and there's not really a good answer. You just kind of find time, and you get rid of things that are not valuable to whatever your goal may be. So I don't watch a lot of TV. I try not to spend too much time messing around on social media, although I'm pretty bad about, especially like in the morning, I get up and I'm like, let me just sit here for 30 minutes and waste.
What's designed for? Yeah.
Just waste time. And then at the end, I'm like, well, that was a stupid waste of time. I could have run another couple miles. And then a lot of it's just been, it's not necessarily I'm just putting out so much more effort. I've been so consistent for so long, right? So I ran my first marathon in 2003, didn't start OCR until a decade later, 2013. And then it took me about a decade to hit this goal, right? To 2024, right? So I've just been very consistent for a very long time. And when you do that, your body starts physically changing, and then you can get away with not training as much. Yeah. So there's all sorts of, when I used to read a lot of books on marathon running, Hanson's marathon training plan had a much lower volume for a lot of their elites, and they were doing really well. Desiree Linden, I know you've talked to and read her book and interviewed. She was on that team for a while, and they advocated for a much lower training volume. But again, that training volume is lower because it's built upon people who were doing 100-mile weeks for years.
Right.
So you can get away with less volume and focusing more on speed. So I think like I've really reduced the amount of I actually trained for obstacles in the last couple of years, solely because Conquer the Gauntlet stopped putting on as many races. And I had more muscle than I necessarily needed for the other brands. So I think my obstacle proficiency probably has gone down a little bit in the last couple of years.
Going back to your wife, other people may know her as the undefeated Rugged Maniac Stein hoisting champion. Speak to that real quick, because I think that's the coolest. First off, horrible that Rugged Maniac's gone. I took that news as when I first read it. I'm like, oh, well, at least they're gonna finish the year, and then they didn't, and I was
yeah, it's a shame.
But speak of your wife's accomplishments there too.
Side note, I always wish when brands go out of business, I wish they let people know. And then I think you'd get a boost, even if it's just for one event. Hey, we're going out of business, or hey, we're stopping putting on events. Last chance for Rugged Maniac is in a month.
And not for nothing, but their Southwick, Massachusetts was their biggest event every year.
Huge.
And I missed it for the past 2 years, which made me feel even more guilty. Like, oh, I'm part of the problem, but like, life gets busy. It always meant like Savage and Rugged Maniac for me, and I loved them so much.
I had a bunch of Rugged on the schedule this year to kind of fill some gaps, and then they went out, and I was like, I got to start find other races.
The worst thing was I cleared them from my schedule, and then it didn't save, and then I had to open it back up and clear them again. It was just 2 blows.
So 2015, we're at a Rugged Maniac, and they do a Stein hoisting where you hold out a full stein of beer, and whoever's the last person standing wins. My wife has our daughter, who's 6 months old at the time, in like a chest harness. And my wife's pretty strong. And I'm like, hey, Amy, go up there and win this Stein hoisting thing. She's like, I don't know. Because they're always trying to get people to join. And, people are real hesitant. So I eventually convinced my wife to do it. She's super introverted. And right before she goes up, I'm like, all right, give me my daughter. She's asleep. And my wife's like, we're not disrupting our daughter. She's sleeping. So my wife goes on stage with our daughter strapped to her chest, holds out the beer stein. First of all, people are shocked she's up there holding with the baby still. And then she wins. And the picture is so good because even the people she beat are celebrating. And my daughter is still completely racked out, completely asleep. So she wins the Stein hoisting in 2015. And then it became a thing. It was like, well, now you have to compete. You have to keep competing. And so she went on an undefeated streak from 2015 to the brand closes in 2023. We think it was about 10 wins. I'm not 100% sure. It's 10 wins plus or minus 1, I think. And would just go in there and dominate. And every time she'd show up to an event, it would just, it was a massacre. Yeah. Like she there were times where she wouldn't even look like she was tired, and everyone else like gives up. And so it made those events special. And the running joke was we're going to Rugged Maniac for the Stein hoisting. Also on the side, I'm going to do an OCR. And whenever I post about her wins or live stream her Stein hoisting, it always gets more likes than like my actual OCR stuff. So it's like, all right, I see you guys are following me for my wife's social media. Because she doesn't really use social media. So. Yeah.
And then you bought her like a championship belt, I believe, too, right?
So I was going to, and I was working on getting it redesigned, and ended up not actually doing it, and I theoretically could still do it. So I've got a lot going on. I'm sure we'll get to that, but I don't know. Yeah, I might still do it. We'll see.
Yeah, love it. To celebrate, I saw you had some Lebanese food with Amin to celebrate the victory. Caitlin, I just tried Indian food for the first time. I'm feeling daring. Explain like what Lebanese food is like. How would you explain that?
It's Mediterranean. So a lot of times the places won't call themselves Middle Eastern food.
Right.
Marketing.
Yes. Yeah.
So a lot of times you look for Mediterranean food. That's the place to go. But it's basically rice, chicken. They usually have a couple other meats, kind of like kebab type food. Then they have hummus. They have baba ganoush. They have tabbouleh, which is like finely ground cilantro and other kind of spices. It's like
Yeah.
that's really good. And then they got something called fattoush salad is what I like. It's another salad with some sort of spices on it. It's just a lot of it's kind of like plain but healthy type food.
Okay.
So Amin wasn't here, but there's a Lebanese place that's close to me in New York.
Okay. Well, I wondered that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he and every time we go to one of the Hannibal race, he always treats us to Lebanese food. And so I enjoyed that was my post race kind of victory celebration, and it's usually like family style. So a lot of times they order a whole bunch of stuff for the table and everyone just kind of digs in and kind of shares the food.
That sounds great. Yeah. Caitlin is not willing to try new foods. So I had to pull her arm, and unfortunately she didn't like it. But everything that I had at the Indian restaurant was amazing, and I'm all about trying new foods because I always think like, what if you don't know if you haven't had your favorite food yet? Like it could.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah.
So starting to pivot a little bit, what is coming up next for you? I know you have a move coming up in the next few months that I'm personally excited about. So what's the plan?
So I've been in the Army for 19 years and about 7 or 8 months at this point. So at 20 years, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
At 20 years, I can retire. So I will retire this year, and then I will move to Boston to help you now. I'm moving to Boston. So I am legitimately moving to Boston with my family. I'm starting a program up there at a college called Hellenic College of Holy Cross. It's a 4-year seminary program. I'll get a master's of divinity and come out in 4 years as ordained as an Orthodox priest. So I will, at that point, I'll move back to the Midwest and probably take over a parish there and do the Lord's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I love that you took a kind of like Descartes philosophical view on this, is that like you were born into this religion and you kind of took a step back and said like, what are the odds that I was kind of born into the right religion? It's kind of like a gamble and all that. And we all have thoughts on religion and all that, but explain how like you took a step back and you kind of like worked your way forward into like choosing this path.
Yeah, so you hit it exactly right. I was like, well, what's the probability I was born into the correct religion? And I was like, probably pretty low. So, or at least the right denomination of Christianity.
Fair.
So I went back and I was like, well, let me figure out if I think Christianity is correct. And then as I started exploring that, I was like, no, I haven't started back far enough. So I need to figure out if I think there's a God. So I went back and kind of struggled with that answer, and I did some thinking and research and kind of thought through it. A book called The Case for the Creator, I think is pretty good. Answers a lot of those questions, in my opinion. I don't agree with everything in the book. He says he's got some evolution and stuff that I'm not going to get into that, but disagree with some of the stuff he says there. So yes, I believe there's God. If there's a God that overwatches or that is like has a relationship with Earth, I believe he would have at some point made himself known, and that would be one of the world's major religions. So I kind of looked at the major religions, figured out which one makes the most sense and has the best evidence. And that, to me, that's the really most important part. What has the best evidence? What's someone just saying something, and what's something that is historical proof and has been backed up. And then also there's people who are willing to die for their faith. I think that's which sounds kind of odd, but that's right. If the people who are immediately in contact with in this case Jesus are willing to immediately, right, like not to go too deep in the
Bible. Badly too. Yeah,
not to go too deep in the Bible, right? But like Peter in the Bible is like, oh, Jesus, don't know that dude. And then like a couple months later, he's like, oh yeah, nail me to this cross upside down because I don't deserve to die the same way. Something happened substantial that caused a significant change in opinion. So basically looked at Christianity again, another Lee Strobel book, The Case for Christ. That's a good book to read if anyone's curious about it. And then I was like, well, what do I think is the most accurate version of Christianity and is the closest to what the apostles were doing? And long story short, it's Orthodox Christianity. My parents raised me Greek Orthodox, so it's kind of how it happened. And I started reading early. So like the Bible was written end of the first century, wasn't assembled until about 300. There's other writings during that time. So I read a bunch of those other writings, and from the writings from the first couple thousand years when the church was completely unified, and they all seem to say the same thing. and they all point to the same views that the Orthodox Church still has. So that's kind of the conclusion I came to. I highly encourage other people to do their own research and figure it out for themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that I have my own thoughts on religion too. I majored in philosophy and I took a lot of courses on religion. It's always amazing to me. But the way I see it too is like, as long as it is a useful tool for people and it helps build a community, I'm all for it. So I love that. Also, speaking to that religion too, explain the different shape of the cross, because I feel like that's something that kind of confuses people.
The one on my back you're talking?
Yeah.
So, an Orthodox cross, a lot of times you'll see it more in Russian Orthodox churches than you will in Greek Orthodox churches. When the Orthodox Church spread, when the church spread, because it wasn't called Orthodox until after the schism in 1054, they essentially adopted the language of that area. So the Russian Orthodox Church generally believes the same thing as the Greek Orthodox Church, same thing as the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, same thing as the, they're generally the same. Primarily using the Russian Orthodox Church, or you will see in the Greek Orthodox Church, is the 3-bar cross.
Yep.
Which is what I have on my back. The 3 bars represent the Trinity. The bottom bar is slanted because when Jesus was crucified, he was crucified with 2 criminals. One of them repented for his sins and one of them did not. So one of them went up to heaven, one of them went down to hell, which is why the bottom bar is kind of angled. I just kind of really, to be honest with you, I think I really like the cross. It really called out to me because I used to be a fan of Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, the knights that protect the Holy Grail have the cruciform sword tattoo. And it's not the same symbol, but it looks really close. And I think, honestly, that's what initially drew me like to the logo.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome. What is the plan for the future of the sport? So are you willing to come and check out some local OCRs in the New England area with me? What's the plan with that?
Yeah, so I'm definitely I'm still planning on racing. It will be more local. So if you're in New England area, I'm sure we're going to cross paths a whole bunch over the next 4 years. I'm still planning on racing kind of those local brands. I'm not really planning on traveling outside of, say, probably about a 4-hour bubble of Boston.
4 hours, pretty good. What it can get you here.
Yeah, and I'm not doing everything within a 4-hour bubble.
Yeah.
I will go to I'll be kind of picking and choosing and go to some events. I also will basically be living off my retirement, so I won't have like a steady income of what I'm used to. Right, so that also kind of limits where and how much I can travel. My daughter's also doing a lot of competitive dance, right? So when I'm not racing and I'm not doing martial arts, I'm typically at a dance competition. And someone called me a dance dad 2 weeks ago, and my brain reset, and I was like so confused. I was like, "Am I a dance dad? What is that?"
Yeah.
So that's something we're doing now. Now my son's about to turn 5, so he'll start. I don't know what he'll get involved in, but he'll start doing something. Whatever he wants to do to stay physically active. And then for like the toughest, I think I might be done doing individual. I can be talked back into team. I'm done individual for World's Toughest, or at least for now. I think I might go to World's Toughest this year as media. I think that would be fun.
That would be great.
And I think,
a lot of fun. Yeah.
And I think I could provide a lot of insight for people watching as far as like details of the obstacle, like methods of crossing. And I think I could be interesting and entertaining and provide value to people who are watching the event live. Also, as someone who's competed at that level with some of those guys, I think I could provide some good insight. I think I'm going to do that. It's my current plan.
Yeah, media is my favorite way of enjoying World's Toughest. And I say to everyone, like, if you're not going to run it, you can pit. Media is not open to everybody, but like there's so many ways that you can, if you volunteer, there's so many ways to enjoy it. I think as long as you stay involved in some way, like you're gonna have a great time. And like you said too, like you get access to all of like the fun pit things and see all the people suffering and see all the victories, and you get to be removed from it, but not so much that you don't get to enjoy that, if you know what I mean. So
yeah. A little less suffering too.
Yeah.
I feel like I've done my fair share of suffering between OCR and other races and then the military. It's
I'd say so. Jonathan Stern says, not a question, but just a big thank you for inspiring me to do World's Toughest Mudder through your books.
Oh, awesome. That's so cool. It's so funny. I do so much writing and like podcast production, and sometimes, sometimes you get no feedback. Sometimes you get a little feedback. It's usually nothing. It's usually just like I'm sending information to the abyss.
Mhm.
So anytime someone says something nice, it really means a lot. And especially like on course, I've had people say stuff on course, and to me that like always just cheers me up and
Yeah.
gives that little extra burst of energy.
We've talked about like numbers and stuff like off the record before too, and just how like you keep an eye on the numbers. Me more like podcasts, you more books, but it's so much better like if you put a name to those, and that's a big thing.
Yes.
Patreon is like, yeah, I get financial support, but it lets me know that there's people that care so much about what I'm doing that they're willing to pay for it, even though it's free. Like that means a lot, and so like I don't know. Just encouraging people to like reach out, tell people that you like things too. Money talks and all that, but like also just it feels nice to content creators or whatever you want to call us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Any sponsors or people that like you like to thank?
I got to thank the team that came out for the 100th podium again. Those guys were not planning on racing. I asked them, and they essentially did a favor for me and came out and raced, and were part of it. A lot of them had like Christian was sick. He had just done Ironman Texas, I think, the week before. Miko had just done a 50-miler 2 weeks before. Ryan was coming off an injury, right? So they weren't 100%, and they still came out and performed. The Mud Gear Hannibal Race Pro Team, just a phenomenal group of athletes, and it's been my pleasure to be the leader, air quotes there. I helped organize the things, and I helped organize the sponsors of that group of athletes, and my honor again to be associated with them. And then, thank you again for having me on your podcast multiple times.
Yeah.
Our trip to OCR America too. If anyone hasn't seen my documentary, I'll send you if you have the free link right now. Drop that in the show notes for people. Check that out. Normally it's $10, but kind of in celebration of the 100th podium, I made it free for a bunch of people. I might change it so you have to pay for it again. We'll see how I'm feeling.
And it is worth it if you're going to pay for it. Like it's not $100. Like it's worth what it's worth.
Yeah, it's $10. It's 24 minutes. It's entertaining. It's made by a professional filmmaker, Bobby Ross. And then obviously thank my family, my parents. My dad especially has been a huge supporter, and he's been at almost all my ultras, and I don't think you can get this far without a good support system. My wife, my family, other racers, right? Like I think everyone plays a little bit of role, and I think we often undersell the role we play. So I just really appreciate anyone who's ever bought a book, ever listened to my podcast, ever taken the time to learn a little bit more and say something nice to me on the course. Those, like you were saying, those moments do mean a lot.
Yeah. And where can people follow along with your show, Strength and Speed, the Mud Gear Hannibal Race Pro Team, your books, yourself personally? Where can people follow all you?
Yeah, so Strength and Speed, you go to teamstrengthspeed.com or ultraocrman.com. They both bring you to the same website. It's divided into 3 portions. It's got a fitness portion, which is all OCR, a fighting portion, which covers some of the martial arts stuff I've been doing, some Brazilian jiu-jitsu and weird knife combative stuff. It's a bizarre world I've fallen into on the side, but it's fun. I think it's really interesting. And then there's a faith portion. At one point, I actually had a podcast for my church, Annunciation, Greek Orthodox Church, and we did a couple of podcast episodes. So I just actually today uploaded some of those onto the website directly. So if anyone wants to listen to those, you can listen to those. They're separated out, and then they're the strength and speed episodes that have like a faith component. It occasionally came up in topic. I kind of separated those out. So if you want to kind of focus on that. Mud Gear Hannibal Race Pro Team. We have social media channels, Instagram and Facebook. And then our website is ocrproteam.com because we've changed title sponsors a couple times and I got tired of changing the website. So now it's just OCR Pro Team.
I think that's a good call. And I'll link all those down below. But
and we are the longest running OCR Pro Team.
Yeah.
The Spartan Pro Team gave up a couple of years ago. We've been going since 2016 with it was our 3rd basically title sponsor. And I don't know how much more I'll be leading that charge. I'll probably shift back to more of a managerial position, but hopefully whoever takes over after me keeps it going.
Yeah, and hopefully more of those will pop up too. I think it's really good for the sport to have these pro teams around and to get more sponsors involvement. And I think you're doing things right with that.
Yeah, it's really, in some ways, it's really like a mini union of like athletes or little cohesive band of athletes working together to make something happen.
Yeah.
So there's really there's nothing stopping from other people from doing it besides the amount of work it requires. Like if you're a high level athlete, you consider, or you're doing well in races, you can like form your own pro team.
Yeah.
Like I'm not, there's some people like, I'll like try to guard the name. Like it's somehow like if there's too many pros, it devalues the word pro. I think at some outside brands need to hear that word and associate with our sport in order to bring more money and more sponsors into our sport. So I'm more liberal with that term. Like, yeah, you want to call yourself a pro? Go for it, man. Rack up a couple podiums, win some money, get some sponsors, start calling yourself a pro, and like let's start reaching out to brands and kind of bring them into the sport and cut down the cost of racing.
Yeah, love it. Well, Evan, always great talking to you. Congratulations on your 100th podium. That's a massive, massive deal. And looking forward to seeing you in Boston.
Sounds good. I'll see you soon, Mike.
Welcome back.
Thank you to Evan Perperis. Looking forward to seeing you in August. He finishes moving in like when we get back from our honeymoon, I think. So that'll be exciting.
That is exciting. Where is he moving to? Like actual Boston?
Boston
or?
Area, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Greater Boston area. I know, not the easiest place to get to, but hey, we're almost done with public transportation in Taunton, right?
Well, Fall River.
Okay, close. For related episodes, there's a whole bunch. I'm just going to list some of them, and some of them are a lot of them. For episode 159, that is when he came on the show to talk about OCR America 2, When Hell Freezes Over, with Evan Perperis. Episode 161 was OCR America 2's Uncut Audio, days 1 through 7. So this is when I hosted the Strength and Speed podcast and did podcast coverage over on that show. And then this was the uncut audio. I just kind of used everything and not just super short episodes. 162 was OCR America 2, Uncut Audio, Day 8, the KC Timber Challenge with Jen Scott. And that's when I did the same thing for the last day. It also just did coverage for my own show at that race in Kansas, I believe. Yeah. Also, episode 217 is OCR Mill 21,000 feet, an American Ninja Warrior with Evan Perperis. We had him on to talk about that adventure. And then 283 was OCR Everest, quote unquote, on endurance and more with Evan Perperis. That was another yearly challenge that he did. And then 358 was World's Toughest Mudder 2023, Part 1, Community Dinner and Race Day Interviews. 359 was World's Toughest Mudder 2023, Part 2, Brunch Interviews and Audio. More recently, 371 was Sarah Grippy Snyder on RV Life, Mud Gear Hannibal Race Pro Team, and 3G Mental Performance Training. We had her on to talk about also being on the same pro team. And then last episode was episode 384, Sweat Check, Mud Gear Hannibal Race Pro Team, Ultra House Tryouts, and more with Noel Medina. Links down below, so would you kindly check those out?
Subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts. We are Obstacle Running Adventures, but they already know that if they're listening.
I would hope so. You can leave a review in all the places, but we'll probably only see it on the Apple Podcast place. But more than anything, if you could share the show with a friend. The more downloads, the more likely we're going to continue doing this. So we'd really appreciate that. We've been doing this for a long time and really trying to get back to pre-pandemic numbers. That would be fantastic.
Support us over on Patreon for as little as $2 or as many as $10. Or just go like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, like those posts. Makes people know that, there are people that listen. We need to respond to that person about the book interview. Just remembering that.
I thought you did respond.
Nope. I didn't know your availability. Coming up next, I'm planning to watch the OCR Report live coverage of Big Bear and have an athlete on to talk about it. So not too sure who to have on about that yet. There's a couple people that I haven't had on the show before, so obviously they kind of come first in my mind. We will see. Caitlin, do you have a joke and a quote?
I do. My quote is, embrace the hard. There will be times in your life where everything aligns to what you truly desire and success shines through, but it's going to be challenging before you get there. You're going to want to give up a million times. I hope you never stop trying just because it gets hard. Embrace the hard, and soon enough, success will come to you, and you will be so happy that you never gave up.
Nice.
And my quote is...
Joke.
My joke is, where do sheeps get haircuts?
The barber.
Yep. And then my other joke is, what is a sheep's favorite city?
Boston.
How do you know all these?
Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Well, sheep are known for a few things, and buying is one of them. All right, well, that just about wraps it up. My name is Michael Sefner.
And my name's Caitlin Ritter.
And we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thank you for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to our show and write us a review on your favorite podcast app.
You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook and connect with us there.
Most importantly, we would appreciate it if you shared an episode with a friend so we can reach more ears.
They continue to effectively shine a light on the people in our sport, as well as the events that we are so passionate about.
Our intro song is Street Crew by Straight Up, and our outro music is Iron Call by The Best.
Designed by World Champions.
And what is a sheep's favorite place to get ice cream?
I don't know.
Baskin Robbins.
Oh, there we go.
And where do they like to go on vacation?
Oh, God. Don't make this out to be beach.
No.
What?
The Bahamas.
No, that's a good one.
Bahamas. Is that how you would say that?
I gotta go to the bathroom.
A poop or a pee?
Mm-hmm.
Both?
I don't know.